The Jedi High Council, one of the most important ruling bodies in the entire Star Wars galaxy. They are the ones who democratically govern the Jedi Order and represent its interests to the rest of the galaxy. Any being that sat within its hallowed circle of armchairs took on a level of responsibility that could very well shape the galaxy around them. We are familiar with many faces on the Council, especially during the Clone Wars, but who we are less familiar with are the faces of Luke Skywalker's Council. The 12 Masters that govern the Order are meant to be the wisest and the most learned of Jedi, but with Luke's Praxium still in its infancy, who could possibly be worthy enough to take on those sacred mantles? Greetings again, lore junkies, and welcome to the archives. In today's video, we are going to discuss what Luke Skywalker's council looked like, and every Jedi Master that was on it during his lifetime. So let us begin. It may come as a surprise, but for a large portion of the Academy's early years, there was no Jedi Council. In fact, Luke did not even call himself Grand Master. For about 15 years, Luke was simply the master of the Praxium, running his temple on Yavin 4 as he would a school. Without proper knowledge of what had come before, he did his best with what he knew to do. For a while, Luke was unsure if he himself was even worthy to lead the next generation of Jedi. Forming a council was the last thing on his mind. This was largely due to the fact that the Jedi were so few. A council would have been mandatory if there were hundreds of Jedi, but as it was, Luke was in charge of a single class of just a few dozen. When he elevated certain members like Kyle Katarn to the rank of a Jedi Master, he would allocate several students to train under them, and so the Order was largely run by a faculty of teachers rather than an established government. Luke was the one who had the final say on anything the Order as a whole was involved in, but Jedi were mostly free to do as they pleased, so long as it fell in line with the Jedi standard and teachings. But all of that would change with the onset of the Yuzhong-Vong War in the year of 25 ABY. With the extragalactic invaders threatening all life in the galaxy, Luke's Jedi would have to work very closely with the government of the New Republic, and so the first Jedi High Council would take shape. But it was actually more like a wartime advisory council than a Jedi council. The purpose wasn't necessarily to run the Jedi Order, but to coordinate more effectively with the New Republic. And so, Luke included the first 6 masters that would take their seats. The first was Mara Jade, Luke's wife and the former Emperor's hand. By this point in time, she was a senior master of the Jedi, having become a formidable warrior. While no official title of master for the Order existed yet, she was unofficially Luke's second in command. Oftentimes, she relayed his commands, or would take charge if he was unavailable. If Luke was the Yoda of this era, then Mara Jade was the Mace Windu. She brought a fierce practicality and pragmatism to the council, becoming their rock and anchor when times got difficult. She was especially useful in making morally complex decisions, and a lot of her time was spent helping the younger Jedi during the terror of the Vong War. The second was Silgal, the Mon Calamari niece of Admiral Akbar. Silgal was a part of the first generation of Luke's students, giving her a lot of seniority. Her talents lay in the art of force healing and diplomacy, making her more adept at the skill than even Luke was. She served as the medical official and scientist for the Academy. She was instrumental during the Vong War, as the Vong often employed bioweapons against the New Republic. It was only thanks to Silgal that both Mon Mothma and Mara Jade were cured of debilitating poisons. The third member was Kip Duran, another first-generation student. Kip joined Luke's academy as a teenager, but fell victim to the manipulations of Exar Kun's spirit. He took the superweapon known as the Sun Crusher on a rampage against the Imperial Remnant, causing hundreds of deaths, if not thousands. He was later talked down by Han Solo, and ultimately redeemed by Luke. How many years later, he had grown into one of the Order's most powerful Jedi Masters. To counterbalance Luke's more cautious nature, Kip Duran spoke out for more aggressive action against threats. This provided a much-needed variety of opinion on the council, and although Luke and Duran often clashed over caution versus aggression, their counterbalance helped create new ideas in many times of stress. The fourth was Kemp Hamner, a former colonel of the New Republic. He had been selected for his organizational skills and his wartime experience. On Luke's council, he acted as the liaison between the Jedi and the New Republic's military. Unfortunately, it would eventually come to light that Hamner's interests were biased. He remained a loyal supporter of Jedi cooperation with the government, and he believed that it was their duty to serve the New Republic, and soon, the Galactic Alliance's best interests above the Jedi. He ebbed closer to the way of thinking as the Clone Wars Jedi had, wanting the Order to be an instrument of state, and this caused severe problems with Luke. During the Abeloth crisis of 44 ABY, the Imperial Chief of State Natasi Dalla had it so that Luke was banished for the crimes of Jacen Solo Darth Caedus. In Luke's place, Homner was temporarily appointed as the Jedi Grand Master, but he turned a blind eye to the Jedi persecution under Dalla's orders and attempted to sabotage the Jedi's attempts at helping Luke. He would later perish in a duel with another member of the Council whom we'll talk about momentarily. The fifth was Tresina Lobi, a Chev Jedi who was a master of stealth and disguise. She was famous for her ability to blend in with crowds, and she served as an important figure for the Jedi's intelligence division. She is one of the lesser referenced council members, but we do know that she watched over Luke's son during the Second Galactic War. After Jacen's fall to the dark side and Lumaya's return, Luke wanted eyes on his son to ensure his safety. Lobi was an excellent duelist that was able to hold off both Lumaya and the fallen Jedi Alima Rar. She managed to sever Lumaya's arm before ultimately being killed by the two dark side ladies. In 35 ABY, 5 years following the Vong War, the Dark Nest Crisis began. This event would directly lead to the creation of Luke Skywalker's Jedi High Council. With a new threat on the horizon, dissent happened within Luke's ranks, causing a schism in the Order. The Jedi relocated to their ancient world of Ossus. There, Luke declared that his academy needed a governing body to impose order. Having now learned much more about the Jedi that had come before, Luke followed in their footsteps and established a traditional 12-member High Council. At the same time, he formally accepted the title of Grand Master. All of the members of the Vong Wartime Council remained, but then he added 6 more Jedi Masters. The first official member was Kyle Katarn, a natural pick. He was one of the Order's first teachers, and served as the Academy's battlemaster. As the main combat instructor, one might expect him to be more aggressively outspoken like Kip Durin was, but in fact, Kyle was the quietest member on the entire council. Much like Seisei Tin, he largely spoke just when spoken to, but when he did speak of his own accord, it was only when he had strong insight. Each of his words landed like a punch because of their blunt wisdom and brutal honesty. When the next generation of Jedi became the Adventurers, Kyle Katarn usually remained at the Academy and defended the temple from attacks at all costs. He was considered closest to Luke Skywalker in terms of his skill with the lightsaber, so much so that the only one to overcome and injure him was Darth Caedus. The seventh was Corran Horn, who, like Kanth Homner, was a former soldier of the New Republic. He had been an X-Wing pilot throughout the time of the Rebellion, and only later learned of his heritage in the Force. For a while, he was at odds with Luke, especially after Luke allowed Kip Durin to rejoin the Jedi after his rampage. For many years, he acted as a Jedi outside of the Academy's jurisdiction, only returning to them midway through the Vong War. Luke earnestly asked him to come back, stating that only a man with his own piloting skill could teach the rest of the new X-Wing pilots to fight the Vong. Following this, Corran warmed back up to the Jedi, and eventually found a firm place on the Council. Horn's personality in the Council's meetings took a form of a voice of reason and investigation. He encouraged and reminded his fellow Jedi to thoroughly think things through, and look at situations from all possible angles. The 8th Jedi was Saba Sabatine, a Barabel Jedi, which was a reptilian species somewhat similar to Trandoshans. She was renowned for her ferocity and her intuition, but above all, her staunch loyalty to Luke. For a while, she was Leia's Jedi Master, teaching her more about the Jedi arts and Jedi combat. She also stayed with Leia throughout the Vong War, guiding her through tense missions. And it was Saba Sabatine who would duel and kill Kanth Homner when he stepped out of line and proved his loyalty to the New Republic over the Jedi. During Natasi Dalla's oppression, she was the leader of the militant faction of the Jedi that resisted. She was also the one to call together a secret meeting of Jedi who chose to remove Homner as the Grand Master. Originally, she had planned on doing so peacefully. She only wanted to go as far as restraining him so that they could help Luke. But when he stood in their way, she dueled him and was ultimately forced to kill him. This brought Saba a significant amount of grief, and she reluctantly took the position of acting Grand Master until Luke returned. The 9th and the 10th Masters on the Council was Cam Solusar and his wife, Tione. We're grouping them together because they serve similar roles as being the lore keepers of the new Jedi Order. Cam actually got his start as a dark Jedi trained under the Empire. His Jedi father had been murdered by Vader, and he was taken and tortured by the Inquisitors until his spirit and his mind broke. He became a dark Jedi under the Emperor, and was trained so well in lightsaber combat that he became part of Palpatine's secret order of warriors of Bis known as the Dark Side Elite. It was sometime following the Dark Empire crisis that he and Luke would meet in combat. When they dueled, Luke sensed so much strength and potential in Cam that he became determined to make him embrace the light. Through much effort, he helped Cam throw off the Emperor's shackles and to free his mind from his torment. Turning to the light side, he served the Order faithfully, marrying Tione and becoming one of the Order's first instructors. Wanting to part from his former life of battle, his main focus was on education, and once Luke became Grand Master, Cam Solusar was made the headmaster of the Academy. Tione was a musician, one that had been in love with the Jedi lore long before she ever became a Jedi. She was actually the one to teach Luke most about the Jedi's ancient histories. During the early days of the Order, she would sing songs about the triumphs of the Jedi from long ago, and when Luke's class was small, they were listening to her tell stories to entertain them with stories of the Jedi legends of past. Tione's connection to the Force was very limited, barely allowing her to qualify for Jedi training, but like Jocasta knew, she found her place as the chief archivist and preserver of any historical records pertaining to the Jedi or the Sith that she could find. She and Cam would be instrumental in protecting both Jedi history and the younglings during the attack on Ossus in the year 40 ABY. Because of these two Jedi, the endangered knowledge base of the Force was preserved from annihilation. And finally, we have Octa Ramis, the apprentice of Kip Durin. She was often one to back up his more aggressive advocacies, since she was trained by him, but she still served the Jedi Order with quiet strength during each of its crises. She was a part of the Jedi strike team that rescued Luke and Mara Jade from the Killikive during the Darkness crisis. She also helped keep things as stabilized as possible during Natasi Dalla's Jedi oppression. And when the time came, she was one of those that led the Jedi uprising against Dalla herself, overthrowing the Mad Imperial from her position of power. This was the complete list of the Jedi on the Council as it existed for most of the stories that we have from Luke Skywalker's Praxium. However, the years were not kind to the Council, and several members would be lost. Kenth Hamnir, Tracina Lobi, and Mara Jade were all killed in action. Replacing them were two other Jedi. The first was Bara Takil, a master ironically chosen by Hamnir when he assumed the role of Grand Master. We say ironically because he proved to be an outspoken member who opposed Hamnir's indecision concerning Natasi Dalla and her acting against the Jedi. She would be part of the secret meeting of masters that disposed of Hamnir, and would co-lead the Jedi task force that removed Natasi Dalla from office as well. The second was Jaina Solo, who not only replaced Mara Jade, but succeeded Anakin Skywalker as being one of the youngest Jedi to ever have a seat on the High Council. During the Second Galactic Civil War, she had been given the title of the Sword of the Jedi, and she had defeated her brother Darth Caedus in combat, saving the galaxy. Her leadership, decisive action, and wisdom in the Force were widely recognized. Because of the difficult things that she had accomplished, Luke granted her the title of Master and admitted her to the High Council. Her presence brought youth and vitality to the Council, with many fresh ideas and perspectives. And because she was now married to Jagged Fel, she represented the Jedi in dealings with the Imperial remnants. Under hers and Jagged's influence, the Empire was reorganized into something noble and prosperous. The Empire finally shed its dark identity of the past and became the Fel Empire, existing in peace alongside the Galactic Alliance for the very first time. And this, my friends, was the complete list of Luke Skywalker's council members. And although we compared them to the Clone Wars Council, they truly were extremely different. None of them grew up in the Order, and all of them had once lived lives outside of the Jedi. Because of this, they were able to more accurately see the needs of the galaxy at large, and to come to a proper decision on what to do. I think this is ultimately the strength of Luke's Order. Their non-traditionalism actually became their greatest advantage. Having council members that were intimately familiar with the lives of the common people meant a Jedi Order that would be less inclined towards heartless decision-making. But what do you think, guys? Do you feel a sense of completion knowing what became of the Jedi Council under Luke? And do you feel like it was well balanced in comparison to the councils of the Clone War? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Luke Skywalker's council, then consider joining my High Council right here on the channel. In this slow time for Star Wars, you are the true lore junkies. Hit that subscribe button and become a part of the Order. Help us continue exploring the deepest, darkest corners of Star Wars lore together. And as always, wherever your path takes you next, may the Force be with you.